Well, in Nashville this week, there was a big Republican dinner, and Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida was the big name guest, and it was well attended. Thousands of people attended, but 3 people who did not attend were the only Republicans who were elected to statewide office in Tennessee, and that is Governor Bill Lee, Senator Bill Hagerty, and Senator Marsha Blackburn. They were all no-shows. I think they may have said, hey, welcome to Tennessee on video or whatever. And of course, the reason why is those, well, at least the 2 senators have endorsed Donald Trump, and it shows the pressure that no one's arguing that the former president is putting on as many Republicans as he can to give him an endorsement. He wants them to kiss the ring, as they said. So I thought it was interesting. Also this week, we learned there was something on Axios.com about 3 prominent Republicans from the Mid-South who have not kissed the ring yet. Let's show you the excerpt from that article. It said, tensions between Donald Trump and his former press secretary, Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, have grown over her neutrality in the 2024 presidential race. People familiar with the relationship tell Axios. Trump's frustration has recently risen because Sanders' team had told his campaign she would not make an endorsement until after her first legislative session in Arkansas, according to 2 people familiar with the discussions. And that session ended in May, and still no endorsement. So now we've had this back and forth where on Truth Social, Donald Trump has said, I never asked for her for endorsement, but we all know he did. And he's apparently very upset that so far it has not come down the pike. I think it's interesting that in addition to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, another Republican from Arkansas, Senator Tom Cotton, who may have presidential aspirations, he has not kissed the ring. Neither has the congressman representing the 8th District of Tennessee, here suburban Memphis and West Tennessee, David Kustoff. So I'm going to start with the Republican here. And
I'm on the hot
Mr.
seat.
Tudor.
Inquiring minds want to know.
What's going on?
Yeah, I was waiting for somebody to offer me a free ticket so I can make it. I never got the invite, but look, this is politics. This doesn't surprise me. This always happens in both parties, but I think we can go back to when everyone thought that then Senator Clinton or Secretary of State Clinton was going to be the nominee, and then you had this young, promising candidate in Senator Obama. There's always a lot of jockeying. This is even, I think, more elevated because you have a former president who is viewed by many by himself as the heir apparent. I think the folks who are keeping their powder dry, I think that's the right call. I think that President Trump is the presumptive nominee right now based on the polling, but anything can and does happen in politics, and I applaud Congressman Kustoff for keeping his options open and thinking about it, because there's other credible candidates out there, and who knows when they're going to catch fire.
Would any of it have to do with the fact that he's a former federal prosecutor and there's kind of some federal trouble, criminal trouble that the former president is in right now?
I don't know. Honestly, I think it's because Congressman Kustoff is a very, very astute and savvy politician, and I don't think I think he plays his cards very, very carefully.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to hear Chris say that Donald Trump is the presumptive presidential nominee it's I can't wrap my mind around. No, I'm serious, man. When I look at Chris, this young man, moderate in my eyes, someone who I think would be great on a national stage, for him to articulate the reality that Donald Trump, the major mover behind the insurrection, is the presumptive nominee. It's just hard for me to believe. It really is.
Me too. I'm right with you. I think what Chris is doing, and I'm not going to speak for you, Chris, I think you're stating what the reality is right now.
That's right.
Probably not what your preference is, but it is mind-boggling that you have someone who undermines the rules of law, who's instigated the insurrection, who kept top secret documents, who've been indicted twice and probably going to be indicted a third, maybe 4th time. As the Republican standard bearer, that says more about the Republicans than it says about anybody else.
I'll let you have the final word. No, I'm curious to throw in a little question too. Sure. We keep hearing on all the different news networks that when Republicans get together amongst themselves, they say amongst themselves, what are we going to do with this guy? But they don't dare say it, especially if they had an elected office. Yeah. They don't dare say it in public or on air. Is that true?
I think there's a large percentage of the Republican electorate. I don't know if it's the majority, but there's a large percentage that are looking at alternatives from President Trump. The polls right now say that that's not a majority, but there's still a lot of the game to be played. So I'll leave it at that.
And they also show how those polls change many, many times. Was it Rudy Giuliani was the favorite at this
That's
point
right.
in the campaign, and we see what happens. So, well, I wish we had more time to get into the whole thing with the Attorney General. We may have to save that for next week, but I do want to thank all of you for being here today, Otis, Chris, and Reverend Whalum. And I want to thank you as well for being here this week, and we'll see you next week for ABC24 This Week.